Benito Mussolini, 1883 to 1945. He organized the establishment of the fascist dictatorship in Italy and was a close ally of Adolf Hitler in Germany. From 1922 to 1945, Benito Mussolini ruled the country. Italy under the Iron Arm, a dictator who demanded that the Italians be completely loyal to him. He said that every citizen must promise to have complete faith in him and his government. His famous slogan is "Faith, Obedience, Fighting." Nicknamed Il Duce, the leader. Benito Mussolini's picture hanged in all schools nationwide. On the side below the photo is a caption, "Mussolini is always right." Students, as well as the elderly, are educated to be fully committed to serving the needs of the nation and their leaders, doing what they are told will bring prosperity to all Italians. At that time, all dissenting voices, dissenting opinions must be crushed. People must be disciplined, trains must run on time, and beggars must be removed from the streets. For Mussolini, the establishment of discipline in the country is just the first step. Once the country is ready, the people must be mobilized to take part in a more practical battle, the war. Mussolini shouts, "Only war brings the power of the people to the top, and if the people are brave enough to face war, sacrifice for war, they are a noble people." Thoughts such as peace and harmony, kindness and compassion, according to the Italian dictator, are just a sign of weakness. Mussolini requires the whole of Italy to be militarily prepared for war and face the danger. During World War I, Mussolini wore only first-class soldier, but later came to power immediately as the founder and leader of the Fascist Party. In the 1930s, Italians worshipped Mussolini almost like a god. For a while he inspired his people to be proud and have a clear national and legal direction. He awakened the people to a picture of a Roman Empire by reminding about the glory of the early Sasha emperors. Later, during World War II, he became an ally with Hitler in Germany, but with military defeat, Mussolini was also abandoned and lost popularity. Finally, he died in disgrace. But there is much to learn from Benito Mussolini as the world's first modern dictator. The man who had to lead Italy as a duce, leader, was born into a poor peasant family. His mother, Rosa, came from a middle-class family, and she was a devout Christian. Father's name, Alexandro, is poor, hates religion and is a socialist. Mussolini's father was sometimes imprisoned for his anti-government political writings calling for a revolution and organizing a solid economy modernization, Marxism, for the whole of Italy. His name Benito was named by his father in honor of one of the leaders of the Mexican Revolution. Name, Benito Juarez. At the age of 3, Mussolini could not speak at all, although anxious parents tried to encourage him to speak. But at the age of 5, he learned to speak well and even read. When Benito was a child, his family was still poor, in part because his father was heavily involved in politics. Most of the family eats only soup with one loaf of bread. Every Sunday night there is a special dish that adds half a kilo of meat for dinner. Benito sleeps with a younger brother, Arnaldo, in a room that is used as a kitchen during the day. At the age of 8, Benito became the leader of a group of naughty children who spend the night wandering around and stealing. Sometimes they go swimming in the Rabbi River near his hometown, named Pradapio. When his mother tried to explain to him to go to church, Mussolini always refused. The boy climbs a tree outside the church and picks up stones or fruit thrown at prayer or even to the pastor. At the school where his mother managed, Mussolini likes to pinch students. When he was 9 years old, his parents took Mussolini to church in a city, more than 30 kilometers away from Pradapio. There, the perverted child became even more emotional. At one point, the child was hit by the teacher, but he turned, got very angry, and threw a bottle of ink at teacher. Teacher punished to kneel on hard corn for 12 days, kneeling for 4 hours a day, but if Mussolini is willing to apologize, he will be pardoned. Benito Mussolini is willing to bleed and suffer, but refuses to give in to the teacher who hopes to be able to suppress Mussolini politely. The next year, Mussolini stabbed a fellow student in the thigh with a knife, which he often carried in his pocket. He was eventually expelled from school. At another school that prepares young people to become teachers, Mussolini stabs fellow student with a knife in the buttocks as he touches his hand, and caused him to overstain his writing paper. But at a young age, Mussolini began to show that he was an intelligent student, especially in school work that required writing and speaking. He has a loud voice. He wrote anti-government articles and practiced for hours before speaking out. He always reads. The book recalls the achievements of the ancient emperors of the nation. But he read and reread the book of the revolution. New generations, such as Marxism and Batten. At the age of 18, Mussolini became a teacher in the city of Galgary and taught 6th grade to 40 students. On the first day of class, he walked into the classroom, surprising everyone by wearing a black jacket, a black tie, and a scarf. He does not pay much attention to teaching, but likes to act in night, eat, drink and flirt women at Galgary. At the end of the school year, he was told that next year, he was not allowed to teach anymore. He did not have any regrets. He has a reason to face the real world and take over the world. Fighting it was harder than he had previously estimated. He traveled to Lausanne City, Switzerland, and was surprised to find only one kind of job is lifting. He works 6 days a week, pushing a load of bricks up to the second floor of a building under construction. One day, he pushes a cart full of bricks 121 times. Exhausted and clothes was torn and he stopped working there. For the next few days, he wandered the streets of Lausanne, hungry and thirsty. Once upon a time he went to the kitchen of 2 old beggars sitting on a bench in the park. At night he goes to sleep under a bridge or to sleep in a public bath. He was eventually arrested by the police for walking around and taken to prison. When he was released from prison, Mussolini contacted the socialists. They gave him a place to stay and a job. The rest of the day his job is to write an article for the newspaper there. Living mostly depends on the money his mother sends. Let him attend the workers' meeting and write an article on behalf of the working class. He spends more and more time on politics, odd in reading and writing about socialism. Wherever he went, he always carved a penny in his pocket, the image of Karl Marx, the founder of modern communism. Mussolini's speech became increasingly angry with the rich and called for a violent revolution to overthrow the capitalist regime. After returning to Italy to enlist in the army, Italy required a man to serve in the army for a while. He also contacted the Italian socialists and began to defend the cause of the Italian peasants. At the age of 25, he became a well-known figure in the Italian Socialist Party. Soon became the publisher of a newspaper called La Lotta di Classe, Class Struggle, which was his own newspaper. He was still inciting bloodshed as a way to solve social problems. There was a time in Forlì. He demanded that the mayor reduce the price of milk for the poor. Mussolini said if that not, it would be the first time throwing the mayor through the window. The price of milk is also down. At that time, Mussolini fell in love with a 16-year-old girl named Rochelle passionately. When her mother refused to contact her, Benito pulled out a pistol, threatened to shoot her, and then shot himself. Through such violence, Mussolini achieved his goal. Then, not long after, the two got married. As a political leader, Mussolini strives to become outstanding speaker, a strong orator. He learns how to use attractive gestures, learns how to be able to inspire the listener to wake up through clever words, expertise, and how to make the audience more and more enthusiastic until the last moment. At the end of 1912, Mussolini became a member of the executive committee of the Italian Socialist Party. When the party needs a new publisher for its national newspaper, Avanti! Forward! Mussolini was chosen for this position. He began writing all the political articles of the party. As a result, the number of newspapers to be distributed increased, and then doubled. In August 1914, World War I broke out. Europe also erupted in bloodshed. One nation after another jumped into the flames of war, either on the side of the great powers, Germany and Austria, or on the side of the Allies, Britain, France, Russia. The Italians were still waiting to see. At the time, Mussolini used Avanti to write and fight about the conflict. He wrote "Finish the war." Mussolini, as well as most socialists, saw war as an important means for the upper classes, such as the factory owners, to retain their power and leave the poor as real fighters in war. But little by little, Mussolini began to change his mind. He was worried about Italy if France, a free country, lost the war. He also worries that if Austria wins it will threaten the northern provinces of Italy. Finally, he believed that when Italy won the war, it would mean more territories, especially Trento, Trieste, and Fiume. His article in the first Avanti newspaper showed that Italy would join the war by standing on the side of the Allies. Because of this position, most Italian socialists are getting angrier with Mussolini. They demanded him to resign from the publisher of Avanti. Finally, he was forced to resign. Shortly afterwards, he published a newspaper of his own, called Il Popolo Italian, Italian People. In his post he called for people to take risk to decide what he wanted is the tip of the gun and bloodshed, or in short, war. At the age of 31, Mussolini himself wore an army uniform and went to the battlefield, which made people admire him as a soldier who works hard and has a strong spirit. He even received many medals. Then, in February 1917, he was an assistant in the artillery fire on the front lines. At that moment, the gun was too hot, and it caused 40 pieces of metal to enter Mussolini's body. He suffered severe pain for more than a month and underwent 27 surgeries, 25 of which did not involve anesthesia or anesthesia. He has a high fever and do not know where he is. But Mussolini gradually recovered. By November 1918, the war was over. He, like other Italian soldiers, saw that time of peace brought with it all kinds of shortcomings. There was no work to be done, and Mussolini, as well as a large number of warriors in the war, became angry, because the Allies did not comply with the Italian demands. For example, to hand over the territory of Fiume and the coast of Dalmatia. On March 23, 1919, Mussolini met with about 50 people, most of them veterans of the war. The members of this group organized themselves into the Fascio di Combattimento, combat group. From the first meeting, they formed the Fascist Party, a political organization that later occupied the whole Italy. From birth, fascists have been active in the streets, often marching in black uniform. They sang a war song called Youth. In his hand he holds a machete and a black flag with a white ghost head mark. Mussolini himself is known as Il Duce. When Mussolini spoke in public, fans shouted, "Duce, Duce, Duce." An increasing number of veterans who fought in war have gathered to join the Fascist Party, realizing that only this party protects Italy, honors other countries and promises to provide jobs, reduce prices, and end the crime that spread in post-war Italy. With more members, Mussolini called on fascists to bomb and burn communist and socialist offices. The fascists took over the train and drove themselves. And allowed passengers to ride for free. More and more Italians are beginning to believe that no matter how violent the fascists are, it is better to continue the civil war. The fascists promised to end the chaos and restore peace. On October 27, 1922, some 50,000 fascist soldiers marched into Rome. Fearing of a bloody civil war, King Victor Emmanuel III agreed to appoint Mussolini as Italian Prime Minister. At 11:15 a.m. on October 30, 1922, Benito Mussolini, an outlawed man out of poverty and little education, came to power in a land once glorious by the Caesar. Mussolini immediately began to act without any hesitation. He enters the office at 8 a.m. and leaves as early as 9 p.m., taking a break for a few minutes. He wrote hundreds of letters and telegrams, met with the minister every 4 to 5 hours, and attended almost all public festivals. By order of Mussolini, 1922 was considered the first year of the fascist era. Gradually, Italy has returned to normalcy and restored its faith. Italian lira is also revalued. From year to year, wheat production has increased significantly. The national budget is no longer in deficit and there is still more money left. In dealing with countries such as Greece, Mussolini has always been firm. He explained Yugoslavia to agree to give up the disputed territory of Fiume to Italy, with Italy making few concessions. In April 1924, Mussolini decided to hold elections. He and the Fascist Party received a landslide victory, with 4.5 million votes cast and 2.5 million votes in favor of the oppositions. Despite the assassination of Giacomo Matteotti, a staunch anti-Mussolini socialist politician, the public's trust in Il Duce was not destroyed. Although Mussolini did not order the killing, he did not resign and took full responsibility for the killing. After the Matteotti's event, Mussolini no longer mediated with his opponents and did not allow them to speak openly against him. The practice of holding free elections has ended. Mussolini quickly led Italy to a fascist dictatorship that he ruled with all the powers of the emperors of the past. As a first step, the fascist government is increasingly in control and consolidating its power. All opposition newspapers were shut down, except for the one with the lightest opposition. Commune officials are appointed by the Fascist Party, the High Fascist Council, to elect members of parliament. Union power are drastically reduced. During the first 10 years of his rule, Mussolini transformed Italy into a thriving country with hundreds of new bridges and thousands of kilometers of roads. The telephone line is connected to the new hospital and college, Ponton Lake, which has been suffering from malaria since the time of Emperor Julius Caesar, has also been improved and set up new plantations and cities on the site. Although the Mussolini government took control of the lives of more and more Italians, there were no major opponents. Most Italians prefer to accept strict laws that restrict freedom at a reasonable price compared to the benefits of the fascism that people see around them. As a foreigner said, beggars are out of the way and the train is running on time. He went on to make images of various items such as bathing suits, soap, and baby food. There was a fascist greeting and the launch of the aircraft, which was initially intended to impress the public, but later became a real power for him, forgetting that the spectacle of the military was for the masses. Only without real power, he believed that Italy was as powerful in the world as he wanted it to be. Mussolini's personal pride and ambition to make Italy a great global power led him to form an alliance with one of the worst monsters in history was Adolf Hitler, the German dictator. First of all, it was Hitler who imitated or learned from Mussolini. Hitler copied Mussolini about the famous military parades, youth assignments and propaganda. Hitler referred to himself as Der Führer, German leader, probably the Italian equivalent of Il Duce. However, there are significant differences between the two dictators. On the other hand, when German leaders risked military for territorial expansion, Mussolini military forces were more cautious, weighing whether those military activities have to be paid for or not. In 1934, with the encouragement of Hitler, Mussolini ordered the invasion of Ethiopia, a country in East Africa. Despite the opposition of Britain and France, the Italians succeeded in expanding their military to occupied Ethiopia. Standing in a hut in a building in Rome, Mussolini received cheers from thousands of Italians who crowded into the courtyard below. Mussolini declares, "Italy has now become a kingdom and a fascist empire. Do you deserve this empire?" The crowd below responded with a resounding yes. 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 And shouted Duce. 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 When Mussolini made a strong face, satisfied with his victory. While Il Duce is happy with the success and the climax of his career, he does not know that the future for him is getting darker and darker. From year to year, Mussolini became more and more under the influence and control of Hitler. From 1936, the two dictators joined forces with Francisco Franco, who succeeded in the struggle to form a government of fascist in Spain, and then in 1938 from Hitler, because Mussolini stood by as Nazi troops engulfed Austria, the border country of the two fascist invaders. Finally, at the Munich Conference in 1938, Mussolini assisted Hitler in explaining Britain and France to understand that Germany deserved to occupy the Sudete, occupied by Czechoslovakia. In May 1939, Italy formally signed an alliance with Germany. This agreement is known as the Iron Treaty. The agreement states that each country must go to the aid of another country when there was a war against that country. On September 1, 1939, Hitler ordered the Polish army to invade, which led to World War II. First, Mussolini tried to restrain himself, knowing that the Italian army was not ready for war against superpowers such as Britain and France. Then, in June 1940, dreaming of fame and territory, he ordered the invading troops to invade neighboring France. As US President Franklin D. Roosevelt said, a knife-wielding hand stabs a neighbor in the back. From the beginning of the war against France, it was very difficult for Italy. Italy's military campaigns in Egypt and Greece failed miserably. Italian warships in the Mediterranean were badly damaged by British aircraft attacks. Finally, in July 1943, British, Canadian and American troops crossed from North Africa to the Italian island of Sicily. The Sicilian villagers welcomed them, not in the name of the invaders, but in rescuing liberator from the rule of Mussolini. On July 24, 1943, the High Council of Fascism convened. The councillor slammed Mussolini for allegedly destroying fascist revolution through war participation, mostly serving the direction of Hitler only. The council voted to withdraw the trust from Mussolini. The next day, the King of Italy accepted the resignation of Mussolini. When it was reported that the former leader had resigned, a large crowd gathered in Rome to celebrate, with Mussolini being taken to a hotel. One on Mount Apennine. There, in September 1943, a group of German commandos ordered to jump into the area and liberated Mussolini. 2 days later, Hitler went to receive his former teacher with tears in his eyes. At the request of Hitler, Mussolini agreed to form a new fascist government in northern Italy called the Republic of Salo. By then, everyone knew that Mussolini was a puppet of Hitler. In April 1945, when Allied forces began their offensive against Berlin, Hitler decided to take Mussolini further north to prevent Mussolini from signing a separate peace treaty. At a checkpoint near the Swiss border, Italian protesters stopped the car that Mussolini was riding in. There was a fighter who knew Mussolini, though Mussolini bows his head, wears glasses, wears a German hat and wears a German raincoat anyway. Italian dictator confessed to handing over rifles and pistols. Let those who struggle and wait for his destiny. The next morning, Mussolini and a woman who was with him, Clara Petixi, were taken in a car and driving a few miles on a rural road. The car stopped in front of a house. Mussolini and the woman were made to stand against the wall. Clara Petixi shouted, "No! No! Do not shoot!" And the machine gun shot them. In the early morning of April 29, 1945, they took the bodies and threw them into a car and dumped on a cobblestone site named Piazza Loreto near Milan. Then a group of people eager to take revenge on their former leader, went to kick the body, and some threw stones. Then those people hung the body upside down near a gas station that has not been built yet. The life of a person who aspires to be famous above all else ends up in vain, despite the riotous march, the mass gathering. Mussolini realizes that he has not created anything new and lasting, exciting the masses, but it has contributed little to the basic political solution: how to lead and manage the people to be better. He is not the creator of the event, it is the event itself, or, as the saying goes, sometimes history grabs a person.